Good afternoon. My name is Leslie Miller, and I am from Washington, PTAC. And to do a little housekeeping before we get started, we'd like to ask all of our participants to update your screen name and include, both your personal and your company name with that. We do have a recording going on, and we will make that available. It's usually about a week out from the actual time that we record it. And as we get started, we would like to know who's here and what your company is. So I think we have kind of a small group at this moment. Let me see who's here. Okay, so I think we'll just go ahead and get started. I'd like to introduce Aisha Kadri. She is the project director for the Small Business Transportation Resource Center, and we are working in partnership with her and also with the Port of Seattle. And so, and representing the Port of Seattle right now, we have Tamara Hamill here. And, if you have any questions specific to the port or to the SBTRC or for Washington PTAC, go ahead and connect with us in the chat. We'll be happy to answer your questions. So I think we'll go ahead and turn this over to Aisha and the Port of Seattle. So Aisha, we'll let you go ahead with the introduction.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for being here. Like Leslie said, I'm with the SBTRC. We handle everything that has to do with helping your small business in this arena. So if there's anything that we can do for you, whether that is a consultation or connecting you with resources, we are here to do that. And I want to thank Tamara for being here. And I will go ahead and pass it on to her as well.
Hi, thank you, Aisha. My name is Tamara Hamill, and I am with the Port of Seattle. I am excited to be here to introduce people to the port and help guide them along the way of consulting contracts. So with that, we'll hand it back. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha, and thank you, Tamara. So today, our very first presenter is a gentleman by the name of Jocson, and he is from a company called BBSI, and he's going to speak to us today in regards to recruiting, retraining, and motivating employees. And so with that, Jason, we'll let you take it from here.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the introduction and for having me here as well. As Leslie had mentioned, basically, my name is Jason Hawkson. I am an HR consultant for BBSI. Basically, what we do at BBSI is we partner with small, medium-sized businesses all over the country, and we provide outsourced HR, payroll, and risk consulting services for all of our clients. So, and I basically cover the Western Washington side. So I have clients all the way up in Blaine, Washington, and I'm fairly new to Washington. I'm about 7 years in, and I had to look that up in the map of where Blaine, Washington is. So, and then all the way down to Olympia as far as my most southern client. So, as far as that's concerned. I'm going to start sharing my screen really quick, and basically to begin the presentation. And I hope everybody can see my screen, and it's basically, you should see BBSI Economic Alliance Snohomish County. And I titled this basically Human Resources 101. This presentation really talks about the employee life cycle, from recruiting to what do you do when they're onboarded, to retain and engage employees, and all the way to offboarding. What does that look like from a compliance perspective and things of that nature? And I usually say in discussions like this is the time to ask any and all of your questions that you may have as far as managing an employee. because what you don't want to happen is, you know, ask an inappropriate question in front of your employees and get yourself into trouble. And of course, there are ways to manage through that as well. But typically, depending on the severity of the question that you posed, can really, you know, you would be potentially what I call stepping on a landmine. So, all right, let's begin. And if you have any questions throughout the session, please feel free to stop me and ask your question. The only thing I do ask is, from adult learning perspective, we tend to like to tell stories, which is fine. But I do ask, if you were going to give an example, please refrain from sharing the name of the person that's involved or the name of the company. You know, just to provide some level of privacy for those involved. So, all right. Let's begin. As I mentioned, this is my contact information. Feel free to email me for any questions you may have beyond, if you can't think of anything in this conversation, but if something sparks with you down the road. I've been in HR for about almost 12 years now. Currently live in Washington, Federal Way, Washington. As I mentioned, I'm originally from California, been here for about 7 years. And been loving it here, and have had many opportunities to go back to California, and I've been saying no so far, so which is good. So here we go. So topics we're going to cover. We're going to talk about recruiting employees, or otherwise known as talent acquisition. What do employers need to know about hiring, onboarding, and orienting employees? What questions can I ask? And more importantly, what questions can I not ask? So we'll cover that in a high-level perspective. Then managing employees. Now that they're employed, you know, how do I keep them as an employee? For all employers right now, one of the most common pain points that I'm hearing from a lot of employers and a lot of my clients is, I can't find the right worker. Fine, and that's the climate of the you know, the situation today. But the thing is, the flip side to that, also the other side of the coin is, once you do find that one wonderful employee, or two or three or four, the question then becomes it took you so much effort to attract them. Now the situation is now, how do you keep them, right? And then lastly, we'll talk about compliance. What are the legal landmines that employers need to know? We're going to talk about EEO classifications and why does it matter from a legal standpoint. So let's start with recruiting. What is recruiting? The cost of recruiting, and the conducting a recruiting process. So recruiting, just for a definition perspective, I think we all know, but I just want to set the baseline here. Recruiting literally is just a process in which a candidate is identified for a position, job, or role or function within the company. And there's typical ingredients that's needed. You know, job description is great. And job description, or some sort of descriptor of what the job is all about. The reason why this is important is because imagine playing a game with no rules. You don't know how the rules are how the game is being played. So the job description is essentially what that is. It tells the candidate basically, is this the right job for me? And also what's called a realistic job preview. So it gives them a preview of what the job looks like. And also, if you put an excerpt in there about the company, it gives them a preview of what the company is all about. And if possible, salary information. There's a debate currently right now that's happening on whether you should post salary information or not. And I can argue both sides, but I think more so there's more momentum that's going to that employers should be disclosing salary information or salary range that you're looking to hire for this particular position on the job posting. Employee classification. Basically, you need to determine whether the position is a full-time or part-time. Exemption status, whether it's exempt or non-exempt, meaning are they eligible for overtime or not. And then how are they going to get paid? Are they going to get paid hourly or salary? And we'll talk more about that. And then job placement options, basically determine how are you going to promote and market the job itself, whether it's going to be through Craigslist, Indeed, LinkedIn, or ZipRecruiter, or the myriad of others that's available. So why is hiring important for small businesses, or any business for that matter? So think about it this way. The cost of turnover or making a poor hire is very detrimental. And the flip side to that, the ramification of hiring or making the right hire, right? It will either can potentially determine that your business will sink or swim as far as that's concerned. However, if you look at recruiting cost, recruiting costs alone are likely to excess about $2,000 per hire. That can manifest anywhere from the advertising cost, meaning the job posting, or when the monetization of if you're doing the recruiting yourself or hiring an outside recruiter like our company, it can cost you anywhere from $2,000 or depending on the type of level position it is, or even higher as far as that's concerned. So again, a minimum, what I've seen is $2,000 per hire if you make a poor hiring cost. Poor hiring decisions can also cost as much as 3 times annual compensation package. So what that means is basically once you hire someone, identified an individual person, and it's not the right fit, right? And can be a cancerous employee, all of those effort and recruiting and hiring that person goes down the drain. And then there's also other aspect that you need to look out for is opportunity lost revenue, or in essence, productivity wise. And there's also other intangible costs that you need to look at on why that contributes to the importance of hiring. Lost training cost, productivity amongst dissatisfied workers, as I mentioned, high turnover rates, and most importantly, the last bullet point there is if you have an employee that doesn't work out, how much time you as a people manager are devoting to managing those issues that come about because of a poor hire. So all of those things, if you monetize and quantify, contributes to the importance of why hiring is important. Okay, how to make a successful hire. I think we've all been through an interview process, several times in our career, but basically preparation is key to making a successful hire. Typically structured formal interviews almost always outperform informal interviewing. The difference between that is, one is you're prepared, you have your questions crafted before the meeting, before the interview. And an informal interview, it's pretty much like, just having a discussion about anything and everything about the job without having specific questions associated with the job or the candidate. As I mentioned, being prepared increases the chances of successful outcome, and knowing what you're going to ask ahead of time definitely increases your accuracy of what you're looking for. And knowing what competencies you're going to be asking for and probing into based on the candidate and the position, so you can definitely see an alignment between the person that you're interviewing to the job. Now let's talk about job postings. Once you've created the job description or job posting itself, the recruiter or yourself can basically post the position on various sites to attract candidates, right? You can see them anywhere from ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn, Craigslist, or Career Builder, and there's a myriad of them. The ones that I mentioned, Indeed.com, ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn, all are fee-based. There's a fee portion of that as far as the to make it very productive type of posting for yourself. But there are others, like for example, Indeed and ZipRecruiter, that have low cost or free version that you can definitely use. But if there are certain things on what the free version, though, unfortunately does not garner the same results as if you were to subscribe to their product, okay? Also, in today's day and age, as recruiting is becoming more and more competitive, don't forget the low cost or no fee options for job postings, right? There are school career centers. You have Renton Technical College here in the South End, various community college all throughout, Western Washington, and even the big universities like UW or whatever it may be. Definitely reach out to them if there's a particular position that you're looking to hire, like say accounting, an accountant, and you can definitely post a position for that. And most often they are for free. And there's also storefronts, like there's definitely community cafes. The local Starbucks near here have a bulletin board that you can definitely post job postings. So don't forget that as well. And as far as the interview process goes, this is the typical hierarchy that you can see from time to time from most companies, right? You start at the job posting level, where you generate basically what we call a talent pool. This is where if you look at it from a fishing perspective, so this is where you cast a wide net, as much as a wide net as possible. And that's why your job posting also needs to be succinct to the point that it gives an accurate and realistic job preview, as I mentioned before. And from that job posting, the talent pool that you develop, you can definitely look through the resumes to see which one kind of meets the mark and what you're looking for a candidate. And then you conduct a phone screen, typically before you invite him or her in. You conduct a phone screen over the phone to ask specific questions. And the questions can be tertiary in a sense that, hey, why did you apply for this job? What's the compensation you're looking for? All of those things. And for those of you who haven't done a phone screen in the past, I can definitely provide a list of potential questions on what you can conduct, what's typically asked during a phone screen, and as well as during any portions of the interview as well. And after the phone screens, you can definitely make a decision on who goes further and who doesn't. And then the next round of interviews can range anywhere from 1 to 3 rounds of in-person, typically in-person, or if you have the capability that we're using now today, because of the pandemic, most interviews right now that I'm hearing are being done via Zoom or Teams or some sort of Google Meets type platform. And then as you progress through the rounds of interviews, basically the type of questions becomes more specific, right? Anywhere from cultural fit all the way to technical skills fit, and so forth. Some employers do require some job skills types of interviews. For example, situational, how do you solve problem X? How would you go about it and provide a particular response based on that particular scenario? And then once you have identified basically through the first 3 rounds of interviews, then you get to a job offer. The job offer, basically you have, depending on how many people you're looking to hire off of that one job posting, will determine basically the number of candidates that you'll be bringing on board. And with the job offer, basically, hopefully you already have some sort of offer letter in place or some sort of employment agreement. If you don't, I will send one to Jessica or Aisha for those of you who may not have one in place. If you haven't used job offers or employment agreements in the past, feel free to ask me any questions offline and I can definitely walk you through it as far as that's concerned. Yeah. So let's go a little bit more in depth on what does an interview look like, right? This is the interview, the part of the interview where they're face-to-face with you, either again, in person or via Zoom. Typically an interview lasts about 45 to 60 minutes. And this just is just a high-level overview of what typical questions to bring in, right? The first 5 minutes should be talking about kind of like an icebreaker just to get the employee acclimated to the situation, because for those of us who've been through interviews in the past, we know how nerve-wracking it is, right? So it behooves you to actually make the candidate or the interviewee more comfortable in the situation, and doing an icebreaker in the beginning helps you accomplish that, because that will allow you to get the best responses from the candidate, because if they're constantly nervous, then you're probably going to get nothing but fears and jittery from that individual person. And the next portion, you should be focusing on experience and skill sets, right? Talk about clarifying questions about backgrounds and skills from their resume. Do they have the required background and so forth for this particular position? So if you are, again, I'm going to use accountant position again. For example, if you are looking for 5 years of experience in accounting, quantify that and qualify that. What does it mean for 5 years? What type of functions, of roles and responsibilities do you require of the candidate for the 5 years that they have accomplished, right? What does that look like for them? And then the competencies, again, if you do have a job description, trying to understand what competencies you're looking for in the candidate. Communication is a common competency or effective communication skill set. As far as that's concerned, that is the most commonly sought after from a lot of employers, because the ability to communicate not only internally is critical, but also ability to communicate with your customers effectively is also critical. Because as we know, when things go well, it's perfectly fine, but when things go wrong, communication is key to resolving that issue with your customer. And if you hire someone with poor communication skills, that will be a detriment to your organization. And then the last portion, leave some time and room for the candidate to ask some questions of you or about the company or whatever it may be. And the reason for this is, I think we all know this, but I just want to make it clear, is as much as we are interviewing potential candidates to come into the organization, they are also interviewing us as employers. We want to know, how do I work well with you? How do I want to work well with you? Do I like you? Is it the right culture for me? And so forth. All those things come into play, because most employees do not want to go into a toxic work environment, because they want to avoid that as much as possible. Because again, we spend so much time in our day-to-day lives in a workplace, so we want to make sure that we're going into an environment that's conducive to what we want to work in, as far as that's concerned. I just looked at the questions. How has the chat room, how has the interview process changed in the last 2 years? I think I want to address that really quick. And will you provide a question library? Yes, I will provide a question library, some questions depending on technical skill set and as well as cultural fit, because that's a very important aspect to also address during the interview process. Depending on how has the interview process changed in the last 2 years, I think it has changed in the sense that it's become more and more of a two-way street. Before it was, I would probably say a lot of employers are looking more for the engagement from the candidate, really, to assess how interested they are. Because depending if you're looking to hire someone into the organization, you don't necessarily want to just hire a warm body. You want someone to help grow your business and bring your business to the 2.0 level, right? As far as that's concerned. So there's a little bit of that, and as well as the fact that again, the criticality from the employees, from the candidates, is a lot of business leaders are looking for. The whole notion, I think Steve Jobs said it best, I don't hire people to tell, he didn't hire people to tell them what to do, that he hired people to tell me what to do. So in essence, he hired great high-performing individuals to help him grow the business. So that's one aspect to look at as far as how you hire people. This is an interesting one. I'm sure if you saw this on the chat. Went on an interview for 4 hours long, didn't seem to be winding down. That's an interesting one, because again, depending on the rapport that you built, it definitely what I would do if you are, I'm assuming that one was you were the interviewee. You were the person being interviewed, because usually what I usually say when I interview people, and I always say that set a precedent in the beginning, right, is, okay, this interview is going to take about 60 minutes long, because I'm clear about that because of this type of situation, right? Unfortunately, what seems like that happened here is the employer may not have set the right expectation to you and kind of let it go on and on and on, especially because again, what is the objective for a 4-hour long interview, which is kind of interesting, because that to me is a little bit overkill. But I do hope that you got the job for 4 hours, though. That's a long period of time. Okay, so I want to talk a little. Oh, I'm sorry. So I want to talk a little bit about for interviewer best practice. This is for hiring managers, right? Know the hiring profile. When I talk about the hiring profile, I'm talking about the job description. Understand what the desired attitude, aptitude, and skill sets that's needed for the role. Yes, you might need someone with 5 years of accounting experience, right? What is it that you're looking for them for the attitude perspective and aptitude, right? Attitude meaning, are they able to work with your managers throughout your organization or different types of customers if they are an accounts payable or accounts receivable or different vendors? Aptitude, are they able to learn new things, bigger and better things, or wanted to take on more projects? If there's a new implementation on QuickBooks or things of that nature, all the other skills that you need for the role. And again, you don't want just a warm body to sit in the place, in the seat. So know the candidate, review the candidate's resume, conduct an interview. And the questions that I'll be sending to you, most of you probably heard this. One of the best ways of of asking questions is what's called a behavioral based type questions. And the reason for that is the psychology around that is the number one indicator of future behavior is past behavior. So again, if you look at behavioral based, if you frame your questions in a behavioral based manner, people will tend to draw from past experiences, and that will tell you how they'll perform for you in your organization potentially. And again, know what you're going to ask, review, develop sample questions. You definitely want to ask, be consistent for all the candidates that you'll be interviewing. That's why you want to develop them beforehand. What you don't want to do is ask different questions from candidate number 1, 2, and 3, because you not only will you get different results and different responses, you can't really rate them appropriately. And then secondly, you're now treating a pool of candidates or interviewees differently. So therefore, depending on how you frame the questions, can land you into potential trouble as far as that's concerned. And we'll talk about that from a compliance perspective. And then know where you're going to probe. If your current employee population has an attendance issue, you definitely want to probe into that in the new candidate, right? That's potentially coming in. Ask questions like, talk to me about how many times have you been late or been absent from your job the last 6 months? What does that look like? Can they use a hammer? Do they know the difference between a lug nut and a bolt? All those things, all those probing questions, definitely look into and really understand what you're trying to probe into as far as a skill set is concerned. During the interview, there are a couple of things to watch out for. Watch out for listening traps, mind reading, interpreting what was really meant. This typically happens because when candidates share a similar experience that you have had, you basically emote your own and project your own feelings on what the outcome was or the feeling was based on that situation. You want to prevent that from happening, from occurring. You might, if it's interesting to you, definitely ask out a flat out question. How did you feel? What did you do? Or things of that nature. Judging, right? Sometimes a particular candidate provides an example that may not be aligned with what our own principles are. Be careful in judging, in making judgments ahead of time as far as that's concerned, and allow them to finish or provide or even answer specific or ask specific questions to understand on why they went that specific route versus another why. Rehearsing, again, planning what the answer should be. Sometimes there are some open-ended yes or no questions that you're looking for that it can be rehearsed, but there are some questions like our open-ended questions that can be, depending on what they're trying to accomplish with their response, you don't necessarily want to put it in a bucket that you didn't hear what you wanted to hear, so therefore they're not a good fit. So again, that could be a potential miss right there. Multitasking. This one is very a powerful one to remember. You're doing an interview and you're multitasking at the same time. Cell phones is very common culprit. I try not to bring in my cell phone during interviews. I recommend that you don't either, because it takes away the attention from the interview and brings it to your cell phone or looking at your watches. I've been in several interviews in my role with directors and VPs that basically are multitasking while they're doing the interview with me, and that comes off as unprofessional at the basic level, and at the same time it's not a good use of my time. A couple other things: note taking. Notes should be relevant to the interview. Be careful of what you write down, especially if you're going to be judging and making judgment comments based on the response that the candidate provided. Do not write, comments like she or he is cute or not cute on any documentation. The fundamental reason for that is this: anything that you use during an interview process to take notes, it's what's called discoverable. So if there's any litigation around it, guess what? They can be subpoenaed. So especially if it's in your possession. So be mindful. Again, note-taking should only be relevant to the interview based on the questions that the candidate responded with or the questions you're trying to ask, okay? During the interview, so one of the things I always remind my leaders that I train to conduct interview is the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule basically is the interviewee should be talking 80% of the time, and the interviewer only 20% of the time. And if you think about that, basically what that means is what you're really trying to do is ask a question and gather as much information from the interviewee. So that's why if the roles were reversed, that the interviewer was talking 80% of the time, you're not really gathering enough information to make that informed decision on whether this person's a good hire or not. So that's one aspect. So allow the candidate to basically have much more of the talking role in the conversation rather than you, okay? Also, be an advocate for your company. Talk about your life at the company. Share why it's great to be here. Sell the opportunity. Because guess what? Recruiting does have that sales component to it, because this is the opportunity for you to sell. They've reviewed the job description. They want to hear it from someone on what it's like to come to work for the company, or what are your hopes and dreams and aspirations for the company, whatever it may be. Describe the role through your eyes beyond the words that they see in the job description, and potentially close and describe the next steps. You know, what's going to happen here after this phone screen or this face-to-face interview, things of that nature. So I want to talk a little bit about other common pitfalls and mistakes that happens during interviews. And I think all companies are prone to this, large or small. Hiring friends or family members. I think when you're a small organization, that happens quite a bit. I've seen it in larger organizations as well. It's what's called nepotism, right? So it works to a certain advantage, and there's ways to work around it. Just be mindful the perception that it creates, though. I worked for a large company where the CEO hired his son in my business group that I supported. And so that was an interesting experience for me, because what happens if the son wasn't working out? I had to fire the CEO's son. So again, it's one of those things, just you gotta be mindful on how it's interpreted, not only beyond yourself, but also with others around you. It does create ongoing management challenges. Hiring individuals with close friendships or romantic relationships. As I mentioned earlier, again, we spend a lot of time in the workplace, more so with our families from time to time. So again, not only do romantic relationships tend to come up in the workplace, but also hiring close friends and people with romantic relationships to begin with. You have to, I would recommend to stay away from that if you can. If you cannot, basically the work around that is basically make sure that they have no direct reporting relationships with between the two, as much, basically put them in two different departments as much as possible. And then referring candidates that you referred to a position that you're hiring for, again, it can create a perception of favoritism or nepotism in the workplace. Okay. So as you're going through the questions that I'll be sending to you, some of the questions that to watch out for, here are some things to keep an eye out for. Interview questions should definitely be based on a business need. I had a client one time ask me to ask questions to their candidates. Which do you prefer, Star Wars or Star Trek? So the question I posed to the business owner was, what is the relevancy to this question? It's a very, now this particular company was, well, the role that they were hiring for was for an engineering position. So that's one. So there's some technical, correlation to that between Star Wars and Star Trek. But however, this company was an engineering company that made video games. So there was the relevancy on why they asked that question. Now, they didn't make or publish any products related to Star Wars or Star Trek, but that question basically correlated to the culture that they're trying to build for the organization. So that was the business case around that. So again, most of the questions we typically ask, or the questions you will see on the library questions that I'll be sending to you, does have a correlation to the business at hand. With this one, the business case was more about the cultural implication on what they're trying to build. There are some key ones that you might want to I strongly recommend to stay away from. Questions regarding any equal employment opportunity protected characteristics, such as age, race, ethnicity, color, all the things that's listed here. all the way down to marital status. How old are your children? How does your wife, what does your wife do for a living? All of those things can be construed as protected characteristic questions that are illegal, and it can land you into trouble right away. One other question, as far as a topic of question that you may want to stay away from, in Washington, we have the Fair Chance Act that was just implemented, I want to say about 2 years ago. Don't quote me on that one. I think probably a little bit longer. It's also known as ban the box. In the past, we've always had in the application forms a question, something along the line: have you ever been arrested or arrested based on a felony or things of that nature? All some sort of criminal background check question. If your application has that type of question, I strongly recommend for you to remove it, because you cannot ask questions about one's arrest records or things of that nature. You can only ask that question at the time of offer. So if you've already, have identified the final candidate and you're offering him or her or them a job, you can definitely ask that question. And the reason for that is this. It's just basically for a second chance. So if someone's been in prison for a while and now trying to get back on his or her or their feet, definitely we want to level the playing field. And Washington has sought to basically put that into implementation with the Fair Chance Act. There is a caveat to that, though. You can ask the question a little bit earlier, depending on the position that you're looking to hire. It has to be in two ways. If the position is working with a protected class, like for example, children, elderly, you can ask those questions a little bit earlier. And as well as if you're hiring someone that's in charge of your finances, like a CFO or someone dealing with you who has access to your bank records or things of that nature. Okay. Making the decision, this is definitely a discussion between internally within the organization. For those of you who are involved in the panel interviews or series of interviews, definitely gather as much information. Consider basically, how does the candidate compare to the hiring profile? What is it that you were looking for originally? And how did the person fare during the interview process? Do you need additional opinions, basically, from the candidates or from the interviewees that participated in the interview process itself? Questions like, do you see them or the candidate being a long-term contributor to your organization? If yes, great. Why or why not? Things of that nature. Document the feedback as much as possible. Give it to your recruiter if you have one, or make a decision as quickly as possible. Because keep in mind, if someone's looking for a job today, they're probably interviewing left and right tomorrow. So in essence, make a decision quickly, but however, make a decision the right way. Okay. I'm going to pause here and look at before I go to the next section. How does a job searcher account for extended time off, COVID illness, elder care? Can you elaborate on that one, Leslie, for me? What do you mean? Can you give me an example?
Realistically, during COVID, so many people lost their jobs because of COVID, based on their employer going out of business, et cetera, and then the ramifications of if anybody in your house came down with COVID and then you had to take care of them. It seems to me that some of that is kind of like a reflection of your personal life. And, is that something that you can share or not share?
I recommend to basically, there's two ways I would handle this one. If the interviewer asks you questions about gaps in your employment, or reasons why you left a particular job or things of that nature, I would give it high level. I don't necessarily recommend going into too much detail. In this particular example, I would probably put something along the lines, there was a medical necessity in my family that required me to take care of a family member. The situation for the interviewee or the person applying for the job, yes, is to get to get as much, to get the job offer, right? What you don't want to do is create an awkward situation for the interviewer or the employer, because depending on the situation, right? Right now we're talking about COVID. What if we're talking about an illness that is a prolonged situation, right? What information are you really trying to giving the impression of you to the employer? Because, like, say, I'm going to use cancer, for example, because it's a very long enduring type of illness. So if you're taking care of someone with a family member who has cancer and you disclose that, the situation that could potentially be derived from that is this: oh my gosh, how much time off is this candidate going to be taking away from the job, right? So be careful of what image that you're trying to create. And the same thing for the interviewer, the employer. Be careful what type of questions you're asking. You definitely don't want to ask questions about diagnoses of illness. You know, if I respond to you and it's like, hey, I had to take care of medical illness for one of my family members, the follow-up question should not be, oh, what were they sick of? Should not be about that, because again, that's protected health information. So therefore it's something that you want to stay away from. Hopefully that helps and makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay. And then age discrimination, was there a specific question on that one?
Well, some of us are not millennials, and not that it's an issue with me, but I have friends and other colleagues that there's a subtle discrimination. You don't fit our culture, or you maybe your technical skills are not where they should be. Anyway, it just seems discriminatory for older people, and some of us actually have worked for 50 plus years and have really state-of-the-art technical skills, but they and that goes back to on your resume, do you put the year that you graduated from college,
right?
And all of those things, and phone calls or in-person interviews, they figure it out. But it's kind of like one of those things that's actually going on a lot more than people know.
Right. And for employers, right, for interviewers, it definitely is one of the things to stay away from. Exactly, Leslie brings up a very important point, right? Information or cues found not only within resumes or even the type of questions, right? Asking questions that can be perceived as asking about age and can be potentially discriminatory depending on how you frame the questions. We are getting into the conversation of legality, which it's a question that's probably posed better for a lawyer. But I can definitely tell you from an HR standpoint, definitely as employers, that's why you want to craft your questions ahead of time and make sure you look at it from the candidate's perspective and how it can be perceived, especially depending on the context that you're dealing with. So hopefully, but from an employee perspective, or an interviewee perspective, the person being interviewed, strongly recommend, if that comes up as an issue, I would recommend to let the person know that, hey, I find this this is asking about my age, and make a statement, that this is something that you're not comfortable with in answering the question, because it does speak to my age as far as that's concerned. That's one thing. That one has happened to me once, where one of my managers did ask an inappropriate question and I had to investigate. We ended up hiring the person still, and the person was above 40 years of age. And so because we did give us an opportunity to coach and counsel the manager as far as that's concerned. There was a person that raised their hand. I forgot who.
Andrew.
That'd be me.
Hey, Andrew.
I was just wondering, from the employer perspective, is there a given the length of employment, when you're hiring around, like you're in a startup business, you're hoping to get somebody that's going to be there for 25, 30 years. But if you're an established company, you've been running for 5, 10, 15 years, maybe you're just looking for somebody to fill the personnel gap. But like, do you have a recommendation on how to decide how long the person you're hiring needs to be around? And this stumbles into the elder problem, the discrimination for age. Because honestly, if you just need somebody to run that assembly line for the next 6 months before you break it down, they
Right.
could be ready to retire in 6 months and they'd still be perfect fit. But how do you navigate that? The nuance is intense, and it seems like you could end up screwing your own company over, or the person who you're hiring, which would actually be a perfect fit. You just all missed out on that because they're being discriminatory. Whereas let's go with a 26-year-old who can do the job. And then lo and behold, after 3 years, they're also gone because they have more opportunities and growth. And just if you could elaborate into that
Sure.
system, I think that's what I'm trying to ask for.
Sure. So that hints upon the employee engagement and retention component next, right? It is I do have to say, Andrew, that's a very loaded question because of the fact that it all starts with your strategic planning, really. And that's where I boiled it down to, because when you have your strategic plan from an organization, I think businesses go into, entrepreneurs go into business or develop a business fundamentally to provide a service and make money and grow the business, right? That's a fundamental basics. That's definitely a finance way of looking at it as far as that's concerned. However, I think the flip side to that, though, is this. I think that is a conversation between the employer and the employee that determines how long the person is going to stay. Because we do have this concept of at will, right? Any one of us can leave our job today, or most employers in the state, because Washington is an at-will state, can leave a job today with or without notice or without cause. And my employer can do the same thing for me. But at the same time, I think if that position that the person is in is aligned with your business strategy for continued growth, that's one part of the equation. You need to determine that, right? Because that ultimately stands with that decision is related to management and leadership. That's one part of that. And then second, if you identified the right person, there's the retention and engagement, right? What does that person look like for you to retain and engage? And what does the retention and engagement tactics look like from a strategy for that particular individual? Because a retention and engagement strategy for you is probably going to be different for me, because we have two different paths on what that's going to look like. So again, that's why I say this is a dialogue between an employer and an employee, because each one of us can have different directions of where we want to grow our career. There are those individuals who like to stay at companies for 2 years. There are those individuals who like to stay in companies for 15 to 20 years, and they're okay with that. But you only find that out when you have a real dialogue with the employee and really disclose, hey, I am hiring this position for someone to be in this position for quite a while. And I see that you're a high performer. I like what you're doing. Let's have an ongoing conversation and partnership to make sure that I retain you, that you're, and I'm constantly engaging you. So there's definitely that component from a dialogue perspective. And then once you have that dialogue on what does it look like to retain and engage that employee, then you execute and be prepared to have the follow-through associated with that discussion. So unfortunately, there's no magic, questionnaire or things of that nature, or what magic number, because each one of us is different. Because I would probably say someone coming into the workforce at the early 20s will be, will have one thing in place today, but by the time they're in mid 20s or late 20s, when they're starting a family, their goals are different. So, and I equate this to, if you look back to Maslow's hierarchy, at the beginning stage, when you're young in your career, all you want is money, to pay the bit, go party, go drink, and buy things that you want. But as we progress in our career, the needs changes depending on trajectory that we're in. As we get older and our families become, and we start, bringing families, into the world, our yes, we still need to pay bills, but there's other things that we need, all the way to the self-actualization, which is the top of the pyramid. So hopefully that answers that question. And then I would love to have a conversation about this offline, because I think this is more of an in-depth dialogue between you and I, and I welcome you to reach out to me in that regard. Aisha, you had a question.
Yeah, so I've noticed with a lot of initiatives like throughout the state and even federally, a lot of people are trying to hire women of color in particular industries. And kind of fitting that description, I cannot tell you how many people have asked me my ethnicity in an interview. And I usually will tell them because I don't want to start off, right in the interview, like declining things. But it definitely is a little off-putting, and I've never quite known how to handle that. So you can shed some light on that.
Sure. I think we all know we sometimes don't know that we don't walk in the other person's shoes, right? I think that the way you handle it is a perfect way of doing it. Where I've been asked that question, because for those of you who are probably guessing what my ethnicity is, you probably guessed, are there one or two things? I'm either Hispanic or something else. And I'm something else. I'm Filipino. So when I've been asked that question, and similar to you, Aisha, I feel the same way, where I don't want to rock the boat early on in the conversation, but I definitely want to provide the person to improve, right? Hey, just want to let you know that was something that you should not be asking during interview process, because it's a question that's prohibited based on equal employment opportunity laws and guidelines. So strongly recommend that you refrain from asking that from future candidates and whatnot, because you want to turn it around also as a coaching opportunity. Because if you're cognizant of that, that gives you an opportunity to counsel and coach and counsel that particular person, because they may not know for whatever reason, right? I'm going to err on the side of the fact that they don't know, but
Yeah.
I have not heard of any situation right now in recent times that, unless someone's purely, doing it for nefarious reasons, they only want a certain type of ethnicity in the workforce, then definitely that's a different situation, I think. So
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps you.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, perfect.
Jason, there's one in the chat. Well, it's not a question. It's from Lisa Harbert. She says she hired a student for a summer job. Part of the position required field reviews and needed a car. I asked him how he got to the interview, and he said his mom dropped him off. It really made me laugh. He still got the job and was a great employee.
And I'm glad that you proceeded, right? I think there was other things beyond that one question on how he got to the interview and the mom dropping him off that showed that he was, again, aligned for whatever it may be, right? Whatever you were looking for that role, he fit the mark. So great. And you took a chance. So thank you for that.
Yeah, can I just say that was the opposite of that age discrimination thing where everybody was talking about being older. This was a very young, 19-year-old. And I just had to I thought it was hilarious.
That's a great story. Thank you. All right. So now we're going to switch over a little bit, switch gears. They've accepted the job. Now what? What I'm going to talk about really is more about retaining and motivating your employees. What does that look like? Some of the strategies. I can definitely I'm going to talk a little bit high level here. And if there's any questions on if you want to implement something like this in your organization, reach out to me and we can definitely have a discussion on what that looks like. So retention and motivation is an equation that goes hand in hand. What that is, we all know retention. Retention is, is the initiative that nurtures the longevity of an employee within an organization. Motivation is engaging the employee to be motivated and to perform the job or perform well in your company. And the question then becomes, do you motivate employees to stay? Or do you retain employees through motivation? That's why I think it's both hand in hand. When you hear words like employee engagement, that's really talking about retention and motivation, because the outcome of that is employee engagement. So retention and motivation differs for employees based on different types of variables, such as position, career tenure, and individual needs. When I talk about position, not to down any particular position, how you retain individuals, if they're, I don't know, a security guard, operating your front door versus your director of operations, right? So all those manifest. It's still the same, but you just do it differently based on the position. Then the career tenure, right? Who are you going to look at as far as investing time and money for retention and motivation? Is it going to be your line level employees, or is it going to be your first line of managers, directors, managers, or whatever it may be? We got to look into that as well. And as well as individual needs. As I mentioned, someone who's younger in their career, you are in the workforce, typically have different needs from someone who's been like myself. I've been in the industry, in the workforce for about 20 years. And so my goals right now and my needs are different for someone that's coming in that's recent college grad. So definitely manifests differently. If you want to learn more about retention and motivation, there's a couple of resources there that I outlined for you. The first one is TED Talks. Is a TED Talk by Dan Pink. It's about motivation. I think it's free. You can just definitely do tedtalk.com and look him up and then there's a link there as well. There's also a book called Strengths Finders. There's a survey there. If you haven't, there's an inventory survey in there that you can find out what your strengths are. And if you have the money for it, strongly recommend probably doing it with your team to understand where your team's strengths are, and also where you potentially have a weakness in that regard. So, and then also a book by Simon Sinek, Start With Why. Why do we go to work? Why do we do this? Why do you come back to work? Those type of questions, as far as that's concerned. I think these are powerful resources that you can definitely look into as far as retention and motivation. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about retention and motivation. Retention and motivation, again, regardless of what your tenure is in the workforce or in the company, compensation is a fundamental need. We all work partially to get paid because we need to pay our bills, buy that house, buy that new car, whatever it may be. Compensation is a very important factor in retention and motivation. What I mean by this is you as business owners need to know what is the competitive nature of the market-based pay program. If you have, again, I'm going to use with accountant because I'm hiring for an accountant. It's salient in my mind. If you have one figure in mind on what you should pay an accountant for, but the market is dictating something else, what is the likelihood that you're going to attract the right person? It's probably slim. So again, you want to make sure that you're being competitive or being able to meet the needs of your organization based on what you're willing to compensate for this particular talent. There are resources out there that's available for you for free of charge as well. And there's a free service, and there's also a paid service portion. There's a pay scale, which has a free component to it, and there's also a paid subscription portion. Radford, and many other salary data information that can get you that information on whether you're paying a competitive market-based pay. There's also an opportunity for you to talk with other like-minded individuals, like other business owners with similar positions. If you're hiring a customer service representative, go network with someone that has that particular position available and ask him or her or them basically what they're paying for a customer service representative or things of that nature. And in some cases, as I mentioned earlier, more and more business owners or hiring managers are displaying compensation ranges on the job description. Go on job boards and take a look. It behooves you to understand what the market is dictating versus what you're dictating, so you know what the delta is, or whether you're at market or above market. So you will have a clear understanding of what the type of caliber of talent that you're going to get. Then also, when talking about retention and motivation, please be mindful that employees do talk to one another and compare. We have this wonderful website called Glassdoor, where a lot of employees vent for good or bad. They just do it. And so it's out there for anybody to hear. So be mindful. That is some of the areas, or one of the areas that people look into as far as when they're interviewing with with a particular company, or even whether they want to stay with a company or not. That's definitely a resource for a lot of employees. When we talk about retention and motivation, also look at other perquisites such as benefits, medical, dental, and vision. If your company is not mandated by ACA, so therefore benefits is probably an optional thing for you. So definitely that is something that, again, depending on the demographics of the employees you're looking to hire, someone that's starting out today in the workforce, a recent college grads, may not need medical, dental, and vision, and that's perfectly fine. But if you're hiring someone that's been, 5 to 7 years in the workforce, chances are he or she or them are probably going to look into wanting some form of benefits, medical, dental, and vision, as far as that's concerned. And there's other things to look into, such as 401k, life insurance, pet insurance, accidental death and dismembership insurance. All those things play a factor in retention and motivation. And then there's also the ongoing development, professional or personal development. These are opportunities to do something bigger and better. If you're an accountant today, hey, do you want to do something in operations tomorrow and get to learn? That's basically what's called on-the-job training or stretch projects. That's available in the workplace. There's also ongoing development that's free, that's available, like in MOOCs. MOOCs are massive open online courses. These are courses available through Coursera, MOOC.org, or MOOC List. These are free, academic-based courses that you can take, or any one of us can take, for free to learn any skills, such as, I don't know if you want to learn accounting 101, what does it look like to be a financial analyst? All of those are available for people for free of charge for them to learn. If you want to get graded on them, that's when you'd have to pay for them, as far as that's concerned. I do want to talk a little bit about some retention and motivation strategies, some of the tools that we use to understand retention and motivation, or to help retention and motivation. One is performance management. Performance management basically is typically called a review process, where you start with the strategic planning at the very top on what it looks like, say, grow the company sales 20% year from the previous year. So this is where it trickles down to how that manifests in the particular departments and so forth, whether it's for sales, just to grow the West Coast region 15%. And then the East Coast, which is an emerging market, another 5%. All of those things come into play and manifest on the specific department. What it does is basically it aligns business goals to employee output. So for example, like me in HR, we're what's called a cost center. We don't necessarily do sales, but however, we can impact, achieve new sales, increase sales or profitability by 20% from the next year by minimizing or containing cost. So while we don't generate new revenue, but we can definitely watch our cost items and basically contribute to the company's success that way. So again, it starts with the company goals, and then it just manifests and trickles down to the respective departments. The talent map is basically what it really is. Otherwise, it's also known as a 9-box. So if you think of a grid which has 9 boxes, and basically each box has a particular descriptor. You have one section, you have the high performers, the strong performers, the up and coming performers, all the way to the low performers. And this is really the talent map answers that question for a lot of managers. Do you manage up, meaning the high performers or high potentials? You continue to manage up. But the low performers, again, the most poignant, that question becomes more poignant because of the fact, do you continue coaching and counseling this person and managing them up, or do you manage out, meaning the performance manage them outside of the organization? This basically the expected outcome for a talent map is literally creating a roadmap for each individual person that is mapped on this talent map. Like I said, you apply one strategy for a high performer versus a low performer. And depending on what your decisions are for those particular individual persons will determine your next steps as far as that's concerned. The last one is the stay interview. The stay interview is very similar or an extension of the job interview. Job interview basically is, why do you want to come in and work for the organization? again, coming into the organization. The stay interview is, why do you want to stay in the job? Why do you want to stay with the company? What keeps the employee coming back to work for the company day in, day out? What it is really just a series of questions that a manager can ask their employee. What is it about the job or the company that makes them want to come back, right? And it allows you to do a couple of things. Allows you to identify what you as a manager can do to strengthen that, and allows you to have that dialogue with the employee, and literally, again, ask an action plan to retain specific employees based on their specific needs. I do want to provide a caution for the stay interviews. While it is a powerful tool, and it's a very easy and I think very applicable tool for managers to use, just be mindful. Be prepared on the responses that you will get, because sometimes you might not be ready for them. Hey, what keeps you coming back to work? A response can be, well, I don't like coming back to work. I just dread it. Be ready for that type of response as well, because the conversation can be turned into something like, what can I do to make it better? Again, you're not promising anything, but you're just starting that dialogue. So, and I will provide you with questions on what it looks like for a stay interview, so you can definitely work with that. Before I go into compliance, any questions? Okay. There's a question about long-term care. What I want to do is actually hold that off really quick, because I do have a bullet point to that. So, and I'll address that in a little bit in the compliance section. So the compliance section I titled basically, everyone's happy until they're not. What I mean by this is, yes, we all enjoy our work day in, day out until the moment that we don't, whatever that may be. So be careful on certain things, because of the fact that, like I said, landmines are, I use the analogy of landmines because it's always hidden. We don't know what's going to happen. However, there are a couple of things that you need to know from a compliance perspective. When I mentioned earlier, equal employment opportunity, there are federal characteristics that's protected under law that you cannot, as employers, you are prohibited from making employment decisions, whether you're hiring or even firing or giving training opportunities or giving projects to someone based on these characteristics. These are the federal version. There's age, basically age 40 and up, color, mental or physical disability, genetic information, national origin, race, religion, sex, or veteran or military status. All of those, you can't ask questions or make employment-related decisions based on those particular characteristics. However, I do want to make a clarification for the age aspect, right? If your jobs require an age requirement, just as long as it's not negatively impacting those who are 40 and up, you can make an age requirement. The highest office in this land, in this country, has an age requirement. Does anyone know what position I'm talking about?
President of the
SB
United
45,
States.
doesn't he?
Yeah. So you have to have an age requirement, and I believe, I don't know here in Washington, but in California, if you are going to work in a restaurant and they serve alcohol, you can't be, in California, you have to be 18 and above to serve alcohol. I don't know what it is here. Does anybody know in Washington? Yeah, I believe there's an age. I still know that it's 21 to drink, but you can serve it when you're younger, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, my son said they just rolled it over to 18 when they got a bunch of new employees at Pizza Hut. So
oh, there you go.
They had to get a special certification or tag or license or something.
Right. Okay. So it's the same as California. So as far as that's concerned, stepping along with that, Washington has equal employment opportunity laws as well beyond the federally protected ones. As I mentioned here, all federally protected is observed by Washington. There are other things, right? Marital status. If you are a single person, you cannot be discriminated against based on marital status. Sexual orientation. Again, sexual orientation is not protected under the federal law, but it is protected under state law. gender expression or gender identity, use of trained guide dogs or service animal by a person with a disability. And there's a couple more as far as that's concerned. But these are the most common ones that I see in my career. I do want to make a special note when we're talking about compliance in general, not just these equal employment opportunity laws. The last bullet right there on the red, managers and supervisors are agents of the organization, of the company, right? Whether, you know, if a lawsuit arises on a potential discrimination act, the lawsuit typically addresses the company, but managers and supervisors can be held personally liable for workplace harassment and discrimination and retaliation. So even in the situation where you were aware of a discriminating act and you did not do anything about it, and you're a member of management, you can be held personally liable for this. What I mean by that is lawyers will go after the company, but they can also go after you from your personal finances and things of the nature. So just be mindful about that. New laws in Washington, I do want to highlight this. So in 2018, we had the paid sick leave law. I think by now, I think everybody knows this is in place, but if not, make sure you have a paid sick leave law for which equates to, for every 40 hours of work, you get 1 hour of paid sick leave. This is for non-exempt only individuals. But if you have non-exempt employees, if you have both non-exempt and exempt employees, I strongly recommend to just make them the same. There's more to that, but this is just high level. Paid family and medical leave in 2019, PFMLA is what we typically call it. So this is an opportunity for employees to take unpaid leave from the company, but pay into a tax within the state to get salary continuance. For employees 50 and up, 50 and down, below 50, it is purely an employee cost. There's no mandate for employers. But when you get larger, the 50 employee plus up, it is a shared cost between employees and employers. The Fair Chance Act, I talked about it earlier. No questions about criminal background until job offer. There are 2 exceptions, basically for type of positions. If it's a position that's taking care of children or elderly care, you can definitely ask that earlier, or if you're in a financial type of position. Equal Pay Act, I believe this was done in 2019 as well. Male and female employees paid the same for similar work, right? Now, for this one, I strongly recommend year over year, usually in January, that you review your employee population just to make sure that Bob and Jane who are performing the same type of work, similar type of tenure, you know, are paid the same. Now, there could be discrepancies if, again, Bob and Jane have different skill sets, still in the same job, and Jane is working towards the same certifications or things of the nature or same tenure. Then if there's a business case to the delta of the difference between a male and female employee, then you're okay. Okay. And then the question about long-term care tax that's starting in 2022. You'll also hear it as Washington CARES Act. So as what this is all of us who's working in the state of Washington will be subject to a payroll tax of 0.58% or 0.0058 for all your wages. So any and there's no cap on a yearly basis. So if you are making $100,000 a year times 0.58%, that's $580 of taxes is going to come out your checking account next year. So just be prepared for that. So as I mentioned, all W-2 employees are subject to this. If you have a collective bargaining agreement, I believe there are some sort of exceptions. Don't quote me on that. So please, if that applies to you and you need me to answer and clarify that, let me know. But I believe collective bargaining agreements are exempt from this. Individual entrepreneurs, I believe, are also exempt from this. But again, don't quote me on that. But if you need that to be answered for you, let me know. Again, all wages are subject to this tax. What I mean by that is regular wages, overtime, sick pay, vacation pay, anything that goes in your W-2s are eligible for this. So as far as that's concerned, there are ways that individuals can be exempted from this. Well, there's only one way, is if you have or if you have your own long-term care program already in place by November 1st of 2021. So again, if you already have a long-term care insurance program by November 1st, 2021, you can apply for an exemption status via the state of Washington. Last I saw, state of Washington has not provided the steps on how to do that. I believe it's coming out next week. It's expected to come out next week in October 1st. So stay tuned for that one. But in any case, you as an individual, if you have a long-term care insurance program already for yourself, you need to take an active participation to let your employer know that you do have this. So basically from a payroll standpoint, they don't deduct this from your wages in 2022 going forward. A couple of things though, the exemption enrollment period goes from October 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2022. So if you already have it in place, but you must have the insurance coverage in place by November 1st of this year. Sorry, so many dates. But in that case, other than that, you will be subject to the tax as of January 1st. If you do opt out, you opt out basically for life. You can't go back into it. So in the long-term care program, basically, again, once you're eligible for it, you can participate in some of the benefits associated with it, anywhere from in-home care to modification to your bathrooms, things of that nature. One thing though, I'm not sure if this applies to this group, but if you are a Washington employer and you have employees outside of Washington, they are also exempt from this. So they're not applicable to this. And if you were going to take participation in this particular benefits, you will be, you can only participate in this benefits, even though if you pay into it the next 10 years and you move out of state and retire, say, to New Mexico, you cannot take advantage of this. You must be a resident of Washington in order for you to take advantage of this. That was a lot of information. Any other questions on the long-term care?
Oh, I have a quick question on the mandates required paid sick leave. You have
Yes.
40 to 1.
Yes.
And if you're a part-time employee and you work 20 hours a week, so it takes you 2 weeks to get 1 day.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. So all W-2 employees, temporary employees, part-time, full-time employees are subject to that. So it doesn't really matter how many hours a week that you have, or even seasonal employees, they're also eligible for this. So the Puyallup Fair is happening, right? So all those seasonal folks, you have to keep records for a whole year. There's some nuances around that. So if you come back next year within a 12-month period, and those hours carry on and continue. So.
Okay. Thank you. And Jason, just a heads up, at 2:25, we're scheduled to take a break. So
Okay.
I'll let you run with it until 2:25.
Sure thing. That is it for that. I do want to highlight a couple of things. So that's compliance. I'm going to go as long as I could. So if there's any questions, feel free to let me know. I do want to touch a little bit about at-will employment. At-will employment, again, the state of Washington is an at-will state, which allows this type of policy. For those of you who don't have this policy, strongly recommend for you to review, as employers, to potentially look into. At-will employment, basically, it's a covenant or an agreement in your employment policy between an employee and employer. What that means is both parties, employees and employers, can end the employment relationship at any given time, with or without cause or with or without notice. It makes separation of employment agreements a lot easier. So if you don't have this policy in place and you're interested in learning more, let me know. I can definitely guide you through the process. But however, I do want to caution employers about this. So I've heard many times where I have at-will employment policy and I can get rid of anyone at any given time, right? That is true. But if there's any iota of any of the discriminatory situations that I mentioned earlier, it does not protect you from that. So this policy does not protect you from discriminatory practices and things of that nature at time of termination. So again, just be mindful about that. Different types of employment relationships. I think I want to end it with this. I do want to highlight this because I think it comes up every now and then. There are full-time, part-time, temporary, regular employees. These are individuals that are W-2 based employees. So sometimes I still hear today, regular employees, they sometimes are referred to as permanent employees. I strongly recommend staying away from that naming convention because there is really no permanent employee anymore. I think that's a very outdated rule and language use. And if you do say permanent employee, basically what it does mean is you cannot get rid or you cannot terminate that person for any reason whatsoever because it's permanent, right? It can be a full part-time status, W-2, can be subject to at-will employment, typically eligible for most company benefits. There are temporary employees. They're similar to regular, but you only need them for a determined period of time. I think we have a very popular company that's in our backyard called Microsoft that had a very well-known case about temporary employees because they had temporary employees lasting for more than 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Is it really temporary if it lasts more than a year? So in essence, the answer is no, it doesn't. It isn't. So be mindful if you have temporary employees that last more than a year. The best practice is actually 6 months. So, but from a legality standpoint, up to 1 year can be considered as temporary. But again, just be mindful in how long you keep temporary employees. And typically, I've heard some situations where they let them go, let temporary employees for 1 month and then hire them back on. It's up to you if you want to do it that way. But again, if an employee lasts for a certain period of time that looks like a part of your business, it probably is not a temporary employee. It's probably a regular position. And there's contract employees. These are not W-2 employees. These are contracted individuals. You're hiring them for a third party or hiring them directly as a company. Same thing for consultants. Both are typically on a 1099 perspective. So I want to be cognizant of time. I think, Leslie, correct me if I'm wrong, the attendees will receive a copy of the PowerPoint deck for them to review. Oh, you're on mute.
They should have already received it.
Okay, got it. Perfect. So that definitely has a lot of information on there and my contact information. So if there's any questions on the areas that I don't cover, please reach out to me. I guess, is it worthwhile to do a little bit of a Q&A for the time we have left?
We could do a real quick one.
Okay, any questions?
So
Yes, Andrew.
Andrew, go ahead.
Just curious, and a lot of the navigating pitfalls and traps is that I'm a small business consultant. A lot of my clients are trying to get certified with federal contracts. And when you're looking through the list of things that you're not allowed to ask about on an interviewing process, you've also exactly matched the list of things you have to be in order to make certain set-asides for federal contracting. And I'm just wondering if you've got a lot of experience navigating that minefield. And, you know, a guy who's trying to run a veteran-owned business with his 51% veteran ownership is going to be doing great and fine and dandy, but he's probably going to actually want to stock it with vets and just brand as veterans. So how do you do that other than just going down to the VA to post your interview notices?
Right. So very good question. So if there is a business case, right, on why you're asking that question or what you're targeting that particular population, that's fine. You get into trouble when you target a specific group only and there's no business case, just on the whim of, just my preference. I like to work with younger folks. I don't like to work with anyone above 30 years of age. What is the business case around that, right? If somebody cries foul, can you really protect that in a court of law, right? And that's the crux of that. So with the veteran military status that you pointed out, though, is this. I don't know what the nuances are. It's like, is there a percentage of your population, your employee, your workforce that has to meet that criteria versus someone that's, is it allowed to have like 20% of your population that's not veteran or military status? So all of those things come into play. Hopefully that makes sense.
Well, The one that brings it up is actually wasn't veteran, it was hub zones. Because in order to be hub zone certified, you have to have a certain percentage of your employees living within a hub zone.
Yep.
And that's like, you're not asking for any characteristic other than your street address.
Right.
And then you're discriminating based on, oh, you lived in the wrong neighborhood. Sorry, we can't hire you if
Right.
you want to maintain that certification. And it's, I can tell you, I'm getting a headache just thinking about that last time I dealt with this. But it's just so complicated, but we can do it with address. That's okay. Just
Right.
not any of the rest of the criteria.
And the spiraling point to that, right? Because certain addresses or certain zip codes are considered certain types of, ethnic demographics, right? So you can get into spiraling. Again, I think this has been asked a couple of times also in previous trainings that I've done, the similar question that you're asking. Just as long as there's a business case associated with it on why you're asking it, you're fine. But you have to be able to protect it and defend it. And exactly to your point is the contract or the certification you're trying to get at. And similar to the question that we ask from time to time, even we don't have it, where we ask the question, can you reasonably commute to this work address, right? We tend to ask that, some employers ask that question as well. While reasonableness can be argued, public transportation is reasonable, but going from Seattle to Bellevue on public transportation is probably not, well, with the advent of the light rail, I think once that goes up and running, I think it'll be fine. But with buses today, it's just, it takes a while. So again, just as long as you can, if there's a business case around it and how strong that business case is, I think it's up for discussion. If you can protect it and you think you can protect it in a court of law, I think you're good.
So have a reason.
Right.
Be solid, be firm on it. It's not just arbitrary.
Exactly.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Jason, thank you so much. And I think we'll call it a wrap. And in our chat, we put the link for the presentation again. And then Jason, if you forward us the additional materials, we can put it in the Dropbox there also for
Perfect.
all the attendees. So
Aisha, I'll send it over to you probably by the end of the week.
and that'll be good. Today we have Eric Roll and Arthur Antoine, who will be here to do the presentation. So I'm going to start my video. All right. Okay, so Arthur and Eric, just go ahead and tell me when you're ready to move to the next slide.
Okay, thanks for setting us off, Leslie. First off, Arthur Antoine, I'm a civil engineer by profession. I'm currently employed and based in Denver, Colorado, after completing a PhD at the University of Colorado Boulder, and I serve as a senior project manager with Shrewsberry and Associates. And we'll get into a lot more of who we are and what we do, but I'll regurgitate to you here the agenda of what we are going to tell you. So we'll give you a brief history of Shrewsberry. We'll speak to our experiences and our portfolio of work, our experience with the Port of Seattle. And then we love to keep it conversational. Feel free to interject at any point with any questions or queries. And we'll go into an open discussion portion where we'll go into more about how we got started, business development strategies, how to engage larger primes, for example, and what will set your firm apart, best practices when teaming on a project, and how we support the community. And my co-presenter, I'll let you introduce yourself, Eric.
Thank you, Alpha. My name is Eric Roll, and I am a civil engineer and professional. I'm licensed in several states, currently residing in the great state of Washington. I am, however, currently in the great state of Colorado today and this week. But I hail from the region of the Caribbean, very close to where Alpha is, and I am a principal vice president with Shrewsberry and Associate. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, please, Leslie.
So that's me. So our story, I just want to say that I'm so thankful for the opportunity to have Shrewsberry spend these moments with you all and to tell about our story. We began in Indianapolis. We're headquartered in Indianapolis. We were founded or opened our doors in 2001. September 1, 2001. We celebrated 20 years a few weeks ago. And our first major project really was the Indianapolis airport. I was fortunate enough after 18 months of being in business to join the Shrewsberry family and started working on the Colonel H. Ware Cook Terminal, which is a brand new at the time, $1.1 billion new terminal and apron, taxiway connectors, roadway, elevated deck, bridge, surface lots, RF station. So that was my first engagement with Shrewsberry. I spent 7 years in that project. That was a milestone for us. And as you'll see, what I call foundational projects like the Midfield Terminal project, that allowed us to start from when we started with 5 people, original members, to grow to about, by the time that project was over, to grow to about 45 people, and started developing, moving away from just aviation to even transportation. So I like looking at foundation, what I call foundational programs that allow us to plant a flag and to grow. The next one is Denver International Airport. I was fortunate enough to move from Indianapolis after spending 7 years, 8 years, I think it was, on that program at Indianapolis Airport. And then going to another foundational project or program at Denver International Airport, which allowed us again to keep growing. So currently, I moved in 2012. I left to come to Seattle in 2020. And by the time I left Denver, we're up to 20 professionals in that office. Then we also continue about the same time, continue growing in the DC metro area. So we are involved in several programs in the order of magnitude of billions of dollars in the DC area. But this one particularly is program management, construction management. Our areas of service really started with environmental, which we no longer do. And we grew to provide engineering services, which includes transportation, aviation engineering, site civil, water, wastewater, and landscape architecture, which we started about 7 years ago. And our construction services, which where we do PMCM services, construction inspection, and Alpha and I have worked on several programs that require quality management programs, where we plan, repair, and execute those quality programs on large scale projects. Next slide, please. So here's our leadership. So Mr. Warren and myself, we are the majority minority owners of Shrewsberry & Associates. Our founder, Bill Shrewsberry, he started the business in 2001, and these are the management group. Blake Wilson, Joe Wissinger, Matt Nutter, who is the director of aviation, and Missy Quiggins, who is our administrative services vice president. Next slide, please. Arthur?
Yes, this is me. Thank you, Leslie. So to speak to diversity, I'll avoid regurgitating the facts or the statistics on this slide and speak to how we live our culture of diversity. Myself being a relatively new professional to the US in construction and engineering industry. I started with Shrewsberry in fall of 2017, and I really do believe I ended up at the right place. Our Denver office is a perfect example of diversity. We have every nationality here, from Indian to Nepalese to Mexico to, of course, the US, and myself, Caribbean. And we do things like such as it's really a potluck, what we call it, our world of thanks, where each person has the opportunity to bring, for example, a dish from their culture. We really interactive and share our stories of our history and where we're from. Next slide, please, Leslie.
Hey, if I may just add before.
Feel free, Eric, feel free to interject.
Add to that, you mentioned the world of thanks, and that is something that's dear to us. It happens around Thanksgiving. And it started in a very small conference room back in Indianapolis, where we brought a dish, a potluck, and we have taken that across the country. We have a spectacular World of Thanks in Indianapolis, but we also have a spectacular one in Denver. And I hope to, assuming that we're back to some sort of new normal, where we can do the same in Texas and Seattle as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, to speak to this slide, this shows our presence nationally across the US. Headquartered in Indianapolis, we have a strong presence in the Midwest, an office in DC, shown there, Maryland. And our relatively newer offices are Seattle, Washington, and Texas. And I myself am based within the West. The largest office base is Denver, Colorado. Thanks, Leslie. I'll pass it on to you, Eric.
Thank you, Arthur. As we mentioned earlier on, here are our services that we perform, or we provide, sorry. Civil engineering, we have worked on a tremendous amount of projects, both in Indianapolis, Denver, and we're starting to pick up momentum in the Pacific Northwest. What you see here is a $343 million design build project in Colorado, Denver, Colorado. It's a transit project for civil engineering, as shown on the slide here. And we have worked on several design build projects in Indianapolis, in the Washington metro area. And we have done the most design build, including P3s in the Colorado market. We have pursued design build projects in the Seattle area, but to date, we have not been successful. So we do site civil work, we do transportation design, we do aviation design, we do, as I said earlier, wastewater and water design services, and construction services, where we do a lot of program management as well. As you see, there's a beautiful picture of the Indianapolis Midfield Terminal project that I spent 8 years of my life, got gray, on that project, and subsequently continued to get gray as I started working on larger projects as well. And one of our newest service areas is landscape architecture. I believe it's been around either 7 or 8 years. And I believe that staff is, the center of excellence for landscape architecture is in Indianapolis. We are looking very seriously, and I've been thinking about strategies to actually have landscape architects in Seattle, in Denver, in Dallas, Texas. So that's another niche area for us, landscape architecture. Next slide, please. So this transitionary engineering, this is a $1.3 billion transportation infrastructure project in the great city of Denver. We are providing design services, or we have provided design services. That project is in the construction phase now. It is a P3, design, build, operate, and maintain, and finance as well. And we provided roadway services, MOT, maintenance of traffic, and we're currently now providing post-design services. That project, really what it did, well, let me just say, one of the things that happens in inner cities is you find that highways bisect communities. And a lot of the times it bisects communities of color. And that project is intended to improve the infrastructure, but also to reconnect with the lead that's shown there, reconnect neighborhoods of color. I've seen that happen in New Orleans. I've seen, and I guess you could count the number of cities in the inner cities where highway projects destroy neighborhoods. That one in particular is meant to reconnect neighborhoods. So I'm very proud of that project. So that's part of our transportation group. Next slide, please. Aviation engineering. So we are currently working at SeaTac, or the Port of Seattle. We won a project, and that's one of the reasons why I actually moved to Seattle. Was we won last year a pavement program at the SeaTac. And we have done several service directives, and we have won the roadway improvements project with HNTB, and we just recently got notification that we own a Jacobs team that won the C1 program, building expansion, and we're waiting, anxiously awaiting word from the Port of Seattle regarding the PM IDIQ. So CTAC, or SEA as it's now branded, is a major client for us as we look to expand in the Seattle market in the Pacific Northwest. The picture shown here is Denver International Airport, and we have done a lot of work at Denver International Airport on several of the big programs that they have here, whether it's engineering design on the airfield or whether it's PMCM in the facility realm. We're also doing work at DFW in Dallas. I was involved in a 1.3 new terminal program in New Orleans. We're doing work at Arkansas, also in Nashville. We're doing work at Indianapolis Airport in our home state. And we're looking to expand throughout the United States with regards to aviation engineering. Next slide, please. Water resources. So water resources, center of excellence. So we have these groups, where centers of excellence, where whatever office, for example, water resources, the center of excellence is in our corporate office. Aviation or center of excellence is in Denver. And we have centers of excellence for transportation in our corporate office, as well as Denver, where in Denver we support every transportation pursuit or project from our Denver office. Whether it's in Seattle, as we look to grow in Seattle, we're adding staff as we look to grow in Dallas as well. But water resources, we do anywhere from pump design, pipe networks, treatment, you name it, we do that. With regards to water resources, we do water and wastewater. Next slide, please. Owners representation. Now, depending on where you are in the United States, what region of the United States, it could be called owners representation or owners technical representation or program management. That is a service that we offer across the country, whether it's in DC, Indianapolis, Denver, or in Seattle, and looking to provide that service as well in the Dallas market. So what you see here was, I mentioned foundational projects. I moved from Indianapolis to Denver for this hotel and transit center project at Denver International Airport, and that allowed Shrewsberry to grow in the Denver market. Now, when I moved from Denver to Seattle, the SEA program that required me to move from Denver to Seattle is what I consider a foundational program that will allow us to grow in the Pacific Northwest. Next slide, please. I believe that might be it. Construction inspection, we do that across the country. So it's anything from roadway, from vertical construction, from water, wastewater inspections, we do it. And we do it across the country. Next slide, please. Here we have the stadium for the Pacers, Indiana Pacers, that our landscape group has been intimately involved in creating a plaza. So that's Bankers Life Fieldhouse, where they are working. We have provided design services for landscape architecture as well as site civil. And we have done a number of other landscape architecture projects in the Midwest, specifically Indianapolis. Next slide, please. I think that's you, Arthur.
That's still on you, Eric.
That's still on me? Okay, well, our corporate mission. Thank you for reminding me, Arthur. So we're an MBEDB certified firm, coast to coast. We're about 97 people. We have 20 people in Denver. We're just about to turn get four people up in the Pacific Northwest. And we have 2 in Dallas, 4 in Cincinnati, 2 in Nashville, and about 8 to 10 in DC, and the rest, which is our largest office, in Indianapolis. So something that we are serious about is our corporate mission, and it's stated right here. It says we bring a great depth of experience and ethical commitment to provide the highest quality engineering, what I call best in class, and consulting solutions. We strive to thoughtfully fulfill the vision of our clients and community. And we have this this motto that says, you know, as part of our core values, dissect diversity, integrity, stewardship, excellence, community. And we focus everywhere that we go and we do business. We are committed to the city or the place that we work and live in. So I moved from Indianapolis to Denver, we hire locally. I moved from Denver to Seattle, I'm hiring locally. And that is our commitment to the community. It makes no sense from our perspective that we come into a city, into a market, and we're extracting resources, financial resources, and not giving back to the community. So that's part of our corporate culture philosophy. Next slide, please. Well, this is where we really want to spend a lot of our time, sharing best practices. So this is intended to be provoking. We will present opportunity for folks to ask questions, and we have a dialogue. So one of the questions I was asked when we had a pre-session meeting was, tell us how did you grow to where you are today? And there's several things that Af and I figured out that would be important to present or to share with this group. One is networking. How do you network? Well, for example, we're asked to present here. I would imagine that some of you don't know who Shrewsberry is. Now that you know who we are. So while we are giving, we are also receiving from you because you are getting to know who we are. So things that we do for networking. So we do a great job of getting involved in the community, whether it's with COMTO, whether it's with the city organizations, whether it's with the Hispanic Contractors of Colorado, whether it's, we have the DBAC with RTD, and just networking forums. ACEC is one of those areas. ASCE is another networking opportunity that we use to leverage relationships. And I will say that one of the things that we do very well is leveraging relationships. And we have national partners that work in different markets that we have worked with on teams, that when I go to Seattle, for example, HNTB is one firm that there's a partner firm. Actually, they gave us our first engineering contract in Indianapolis. So we leverage those relationships across the regions. And that has been very instrumental in us growing in different markets. So the question is, it's all part of networking, leveraging relationships, getting involved in the community, participating in forums like this, where for me, it's giving back to the community. So that's a networking. So we're giving, but you're getting to know who we are at the same time. Alpha, would you like to add anything about networking and the activities that you've been involved in, especially in Colorado?
Yeah, what I could add local to Colorado is that I really appreciate the opportunity through Shrewsberry to get involved with the local community, in particular, specifically the local trade associations. We actually encouraged to join and participate in these organizations, everything from the ASCE, American Society of Civil Engineers, to COMTO. COMTO is national, but I've been on the executive of, I followed Eric's footsteps, being on the executive of COMTO Colorado. What else? There's ITS, WTE, that a few of our our colleagues are members of. I'm also very involved in NSBE. NSBE is the acronym, but it stands for the National Society of Black Engineers. And I serve as the vice president of the professional chapter here in Denver, where we serve as the umbrella organization to the collegiate chapters and the junior pre-collegiate chapters. So it's really the first company I've been involved with that has really made the effort to go above and beyond in terms of community outreach. So I've been appreciating that so far. And it's definitely helped me to get, call it, enmeshed in the local professional community out here.
Thank you, Alpha. So how do we continue to grow? So one of the most significant or important things that we have to do is strategic planning. And I remember way back when I was still in Indianapolis and we were involved in the Lucas Oil Stadium where the Colts play. We were wrapping up the Indianapolis Airport Authority Midfield Terminal program. And it appeared that all of the big programs that were involved in the city were coming to completion. And we sat in this conference room and they said, where is our next frontier? Where is our next frontier? And in order for you to determine where your next frontier is, there are a couple steps, not a couple, but there's a few steps that you need to be engaged in. And one of the things we do research. So where is money being spent? What cities are spending money? So we knew at the time that Denver was spending, Dallas was spending, DC was spending, Seattle was spending or is spending, they still continue to spend. And they have very good MWD DBE programs. So that's one differentiator. As we sit, as I say, around a table and figure out where's our next frontier. So that's identification, which is research-based. So we have folks who dig into that stuff and bring that information to us. But then every year, we go back, the leaders will go back to Indianapolis, including some of the directors who sit in Colorado and in Dallas. We go back to Indianapolis and we have 3 days of strategic planning. And every director, every leader, so for example, I'm responsible for the West, which is Denver, Seattle, Pacific Northwest, Texas. Every leader is challenged to come up with a strategic plan for growth in those markets. How many people do you see for the next 12 and 5 years? So right now, 2021, it was supposed to be in 2020, but because of the pandemic, we had to switch and do a baseline for the 5-year strategic plan starting 2021 to 2026. So I prepared, with the help of the senior managers in the West, prepared a document that we presented at our 3-day strategic planning session that was done virtually, where we saw and how we're going to get there. So for example, I believe in 5 years, I believe that my plan shows that we need to be at 15 people in the Pacific Northwest. So how do we get there? So we have done our research, we are tracking projects. So we determine what our backlog is and what resource is needed to execute those projects, and what the future looks like in terms of future projects from the Port of Seattle, from WashDOT, from Sound Transit and King County, or CDOT, the City of Denver, RTD in Denver. We collect all of that data and do all of that research and determine what future projects are coming down the pipe. What are our chances statistically? What are our chances? Who our partner firms are? What projects could we prime? And we do a lot of prime projects in our corporate office in Indiana. But that is the homework that we have to do in order to come to the table as we strategically plan our 12-month growth plan and our 5-year growth plan. So that is critical to growth. We we cannot just get up one day and just say we're going to do this. We have to really put the work in, do the analysis, put the investment in, and do the market research to develop a strategic plan. So we do have right now a 12-year, we've completed that, and we have a 5-year plan. And every quarter, we have to get together to assess where we are against the baseline that we have developed. Engaging large, any questions, by the way? Any questions?
Leslie, I don't know if you would permit the attendees to unmute or say anything, please feel free. I guess no questions, Eric. Let's move on. Yeah.
Well, engaging large, Afa, would you like to add anything to what I've just said about networking? Or I know we covered networking, leveraging relationships with partner firms.
No, please feel free to continue. Yeah.
Absolutely, I can do that. So here's another strategy that as we plan, we not only determine agencies that are spending, but we try to leverage our large partner firms. And how do you engage large partner firms? Well, I have this philosophy that I have to bring something to the table. As a small business, we have to be sophisticated in our approach. I think that relationship building is key. I see the firms, not every relationship, a business relationship develops into a good friendship. But I've been fortunate and blessed to have people from partner firms that I've become very close with because we have developed what I call a mutually beneficial relationship. What that means, I really want to bring something to the table where I'm adding value to that relationship, to that business relationship. For example, we at Shrewsberry do a lot of analysis, research, determining what projects are coming out, making those connections through networking and leveraging relationships with agencies that we can come back to our large partner firms and let them know, hey, I heard about this project coming out. For example, we are working on a pretty big program in Glenwood Springs, beautiful Western Slopes in Colorado, that we're the program managers or the owner's technical representative. And I knew of, because we are programming the project. Shrewsberry is the lead firm and we have a team of consultants with us. But I pledged to the owner that I will go on the Front Range, which is Denver, and try to interest the large builders to prepare for this program. So I will say that that is part of being mutually beneficial, having a mutually beneficial relationship with large firms. Engaging companies like HNTB, WSP, Parsons, Hewitt, a local firm called Saunders Construction, those firms, and let them know that here is a project that's coming out that I would like you to look out for. And I will say that there are two of the firms that I contacted, they pursued the design build contract. So this is something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm serious about developing mutually beneficial relationships where we add value as a small business, leveraging relationships, leveraging our networks with agencies, with partner firms to pursue work. So that's how we really generally approach the engagement of large primes, mutually beneficial.
Hey, Eric?
Yes, sure.
Eric, hi, this is Lisa Harbert.
Sure.
I'm a two-person firm.
Sure.
I keep being told by all the larger firms around, and I'm in the Seattle area competing against you. I keep hearing from all of them, bring something to the table. Go find the project and we'll team with you on it. if I spend all of my time looking for projects, then I'm not making a living.
Correct.
So it's great to say that you bring these things because you, to me, are a larger firm.
Sure.
And you have the ability to have a marketer, or you are the marketer.
Sure.
Micro companies, it's very discouraging to try to, I do water resources. So when you say I do water resources, that's exactly where I'm trying to break into this market.
Well,
And
go ahead. Sorry.
oh, I was going to say, any advice for
Sure.
tiny firms?
Sure. I mean, the reason why we're here is because we have a history of starting from small to where we are today. And I certainly with 100% understand the situation that you're in. You have to make a judgment call because you have to live. You got to make a living. At the same time, you have to execute the work, right? So which one comes first? I would say in your strategic planning, here's what I would recommend. You whenever possible, in your research, determine what clients you want to work with, for one, right? So I always tell folks, you don't want to buy too much. You want to be strategic. As you said, you're a two-person firm, right?
Yes.
Two-person firm. I understand the challenge there. So determine who you want to work with, client on the agency side, client. Then I would say also determine who is getting work there. So if there are 5 firms, you may want to begin developing a relationship with not all 5, but you can contact all 5 and determine which one. You can use intuition and figure out, I have a chance of doing business with X firm, or I just have no clue as to whether or not I could be successful working with firm B. So you can make that determination and select a few firms that you want to try to develop a relationship with, and try to take it from there. But it has to be bite-sized. I understand. Again, I understand because you are a two-person firm, but to me, I am coming into Denver, into Dallas, into Seattle as a one-man show. So I get it. The difference is I have resources available to me, whether it's marketing, whether it's resources for engineering services available to me. So it's not the same, but I'm just saying when I come into a new region, I feel the same anxiety as you. I have to make those inroads, and it's not easy. It is difficult work. I get it because I've been there twice. I'm in my second phase of starting an office from zero. I don't know why it seems like I'm the one who is moving from Indianapolis to Denver to Seattle, trying to do work in Dallas. But I have that burden. But I will say, some days are tough, some days are good. So it's a highs and lows. There are days when I'm down in the gutter, when I don't feel good because it just seems like things are not going well. But all of a sudden something happens and I'm back up. So it's cyclical. So I hope that what I'm saying, even if it may not help you right now, will give you some food for thought and have you thinking about those little tidbits of information that I provided to you on how we make those inroads. And I'll be willing to meet with you at some point, virtually, just to listen and to offer advice. I have been doing that for quite some time, just, because somebody helped me, right? I get it. Somebody helped me. So people are continuing to help me. And I think as part of who we are, who I am, I think it's important that we turn back and help someone else. I hope that helps you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think my contact, I don't know, somehow you can get my contact and we can connect sometime if that's okay.
Yeah, I can get it off of this presentation.
Thank you. Any other
If I could
questions?
just throw in, it's not a question, just wanted to comment. You're on the other side of the state, like you're in Seattle right now. I'm over in Spokane on the east side of Washington. And if you're ever looking for work, they're overhauling the entire city of Spokane water infrastructure, in addition to 2 major highway projects and revamping all of the streets for historical neighborhoods. So if you guys get bored and looking to scrape the couch for some extra change, you might want to think about hitting Spokane.
Leslie, I think he just offered us, here's a connection that some insight. It's those types of networking events where you get insight, right? So I think it's incumbent upon us now to do the research to figure out what's actually happening. He's just given us some great insight into what's happening there. So thank you, Andrew, for that.
Well, I just also know how hard it is to get your teeth in over in Seattle, and the SeaTac area it's a dog eat dog over there. And over here, it's nowhere near as competitive, but it's a smaller market. Very much smaller.
He just gave, this is about learning, right? So Andrew just presented to me an opportunity as a pilot to demonstrate how I would go about getting to Spokane. So let me start by saying, for one, I just got information from Andrew. So I need to vet that. I need to go try to do some research online, see where the work is coming from, who has the work, then determine how I can make a connection with those agencies, either it's WashDOT or the city of Spokane. So Arthur is one of the guys that does a great job of mining data. So I would ask him, I need to know who we need to contact at WashDOT, CDOT, or whatever agency. So we'll do that same process. Get a hold of some people at those agencies. Introduce ourselves. In this case, it's virtual. They get to know us. And one of the things that I believe is critical to our success as small businesses, or in any businesses in particular, we oftentimes make the initial connection, but it's the follow-up or consequential, follow-up, so to speak. We have quarterly connections. So with CDOT or with Port of Seattle, you make the first initial contact, but you know what? Where we fail is the follow-up. Not just one follow-up, but several. So you need to develop a routine. And I always end my meetings when I meet somebody for the first time. I would say, would it be okay if we kind of set up a quarterly check-in just to see how things are going? And I would just keep that on a quarterly basis. Now, on the west part of the southwest of the state of Washington, the IBR project, a program which is anywhere from $4 to $6 billion, to bridge over the Columbia River. I got connected to the director down there, and I have set up quarterly meetings just to check in to see what's going on. So I am informed about where the program is and what opportunities exist. So that's the initial connection, that's the follow-up. The other thing I would suggest, as a test case, as you just brought up, Andrew, is who of our partner firms or what firms are actually doing business in that area? So is it a local firm, is it a national firm? And if I determine it's a national firm, I could then go back to my leveraging. So I will connect with someone in either Denver or Seattle and say, can you connect me? And that's my language. Can you connect me to someone in your Spokane office? And then I need to take it from there. So that is how I would approach, now that you've told us, Andrew, I would approach doing business or trying to explore doing business in Spokane or in that area?
Just the general market research is always its own individual nightmare.
Correct.
But when you get into I just haven't seen an entity like yours. You guys are pretty widespread. And it's like, wow, these guys do absolutely everything I've seen on the news in the last 3 years. Okay. And it's just kind of cool to watch and see that, that overpass, I think you said it was in Denver, where you're doing like a couple soccer fields.
Yeah.
That is something I know they've been working on in Seattle proper, is trying to get those, they're using them for, what are they calling them? Deer highways, but they're trying to just green over the top of the interstate between I-5 and 405. And so I know there's just an immense world of expansion, getting these urban areas to kind of calm down a little and have less concrete and make it a little more human friendly and nature friendly.
Absolutely.
And then I start looking over here and the other end of that spectrum, there's too much and it needs to settle down. And then we're over here and they're still growing. And our water infrastructure is 75 years old. We're going to raise taxes. But, oh yeah, all your pipes are rusted. They could just break apart at any moment. We got to do this right now. This is going up. And it's just kind of cool. There seems to be a catch-all entity to take care of these. You're it. It's fascinating, honestly.
Well, thank you, Andrew. And here's something I want to add, as Leslie indicated. We are a larger small business, right? We have gone through the process of through 20 years of development. But as part of our corporate culture and philosophy is bringing along other small businesses. And here's what I mean by that. For example, we're pursuing a set aside an emerging small business design contract, an on-call, NPS, whatever you want to call it, with this Colorado Department of Transportation. And they set a DBE goal of 13%. We are DBE. I've always asked the team, we're not going to settle for us being the greater contributor in the program. We have to beat the goal with our sub-consultants. And that to me is something that I'm proud of. That is giving back. So for example, as a DBE, I might just say, I don't need to bring anybody else in because I'm a DBE. All of the money or the percentage will go to Shrewsberry. No, that is not being a responsible corporate citizen. We have to understand as small businesses that we need to help each other. And those of us who are more sophisticated or larger need to remember that at one point in our progression, we were once a 1-person or 2-person or 5-person firm. And that is also part of our giving back to the community. So we have always, I remember they were asking about what percentage should we give to small businesses. And the marketing manager said, I know what Eric is going to say. We have to beat it because that shows that we're serious about our commitment to the community, the small business community. So that's something that we do, and we take pride in that. Any other questions? I shall continue. So one of the points we had there, what will set your firm apart? Well, the first thing I will tell you is we have to do good work. That to me is fundamental. We have to perform at the highest level, and that means we have to hire well. I know it's crazy out there. It's really crazy in terms of hiring. You can't find people, and when you find people, they want a lot of money. But hiring for me is critical because we have to ensure that the people that we bring in are technically sound, but also the culture of a firm that they're looking for and our culture comes together. So as I've grown wiser over the years and been in this business for over 22 years, I have learned one thing with regards to hiring. And this is it. And for whatever whatever it means to you, I'll tell you, you can teach someone skills, but you cannot teach someone attitude. So when I believe that a resume is the great, someone told me that a resume is the greatest piece of nonfiction. The greatest piece of nonfiction. So I spend a little bit of time going through the resume. You know, I've studied, I would ask a few questions, but I spent a tremendous amount of time mining for attitude, for culture, because that to me will separate firms, small businesses especially. We have to hire well because it takes a lot of money to train someone. So we have to hire well. And culture is a big thing for Shrewsberry, and culture is a big thing for me. And as I said, as I have progressed in my career, I can't tell you how significant, how important culture is to Shrewsberry, and it should be to every small business. So that's one thing, doing good work. Now, oftentimes, we as a small business, and I will use a one-person shop, a two-person shop, five-person shop, design firm, whatever firm that whatever service they might be providing. We're beginning, and we want to get out there and let people know who we are. So we need to determine what we want to do as a firm and do it well. So we cannot be stretching ourselves so thin that we are, as they say, jack of all trades, master of none, because your reputation is what's at stake. And your reputation sets you apart. Your reputation of performing at the highest level, what I call best in class, is what will cause a partner firm who has worked with you for the first time to call you back and say, can you join my team? The other thing I would always, and I mentioned it earlier on, is sometimes it's difficult, is what is the value that you're adding to the team? And you have to be able to articulate that. A lot of times we get asked, so, you know, what do you bring to my team? You got to know what that is. We can't stumble on that question. We need to know for sure what is our add value. What is our value proposition? We have to know what we do, and we do it well. Because I get asked that all the time. What is your value to the team? Why should the question I was asked recently? I was on a call with a large national firm for a big program in Washington, D.C. And the question was asked to three of us from Shrewsberry, why should we add you to the team? Well, what's my response? Well, we work well within the team. We are good at what we do. And that was a translation project. We have a working relationship with that firm, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to know what value that you bring to the table. And that, all of the things I said in my mind, from experience, has set Shrewsberry apart. And hopefully it adds value to this discussion. Any other questions for us? I know I've been talking a lot, but I hope it's meaningful to the audience.
Eric, I do have a question. You mentioned earlier, reputation means a lot when you bring value to the team. So if there's a new firm that maybe just joined the marketplace that does not have a whole lot of experience or reputation, what are some things that they could demonstrate or that could help them demonstrate their knowledge or experience in some other aspect if they wanted to be on your team?
That's a very good question. All very good questions. So that is a difficult situation, and I understand that. So for example, my experience has been this. When you cold call someone, they have no idea who you are. So I'm going to go back to all of the things that I've said. So I cold call someone, I present our credentials. They have no clue who we are. So remember what I said, a resume or an SOQ is the greatest piece of fiction. So what I do, I continue to develop that relationship. I get to know people. So for example, I'm a huge soccer fan. And if someone likes basketball, they'll talk about family. So I get to know people on a very personal level, because they have to understand and they have to trust you to give you that first opportunity. On that project in Denver, the Central Assembly project with the lead over it, it took me 4 years, 4 long years, developing a relationship with that one project manager from WSP to eventually get an opportunity on the project. So it's not an overnight stuff. Again, I go back to a lot of the things I've said, relationship building. So that's where I would start, because they need to develop trust and they don't know. And then you could also leverage the work that you've done with whether small or not, bring that in. I always encourage the cold call folks that I have, like for example, if I met with HNTB in, let's say, Dallas, I'll say, you can call such and such in Indianapolis to get to know for yourself who is Shrewsberry. You don't have to take what I tell you. Go back and mind your own organization to get information about who I am and who Shrewsberry is. That's one other avenue that's available. But it's hard, it's difficult. Questions? No. Alpha, you want to add anything else?
I think, sorry for the technical glitch. I got cut off for a second and joined again. But I think your delivery was all encompassing, Eric.
The last point, I know we have a few more minutes, and if there are no questions, I'm going to just talk about best practices when teaming. And if you understand, hopefully you've been listening, my theme has been surrounding a few points, right? What are best practices when teaming? What value do I bring? What's the relationship? What's my experience with that firm? What is my technical ability? So I will not go to a partner firm and suggest that I do a scope of work that I'm not capable of doing. That is a recipe for disaster. So remember I said, determine what you do and do it well. So for example, let me just give an example. I am not a wastewater guy, right? So I will sell wastewater knowing that I can go back to a corporate office to get some assistance. But I'm not out there trying to tell you that I'm going to do wastewater in Denver or in Seattle. That's not my expertise. And I'm neither selling it or I'm neither good at it. But transportation, aviation, PMCM, I'm good at that. So if I'm a company, that's what I do. That's what I'm selling. But oftentimes, here's what happens. You're a small business, you go to a large prime firm to talk about opportunities, and they have a list of scopes that they're looking to fill. And you look at the list and you tell yourself, well, I can't do anything there, but I'm going to tell them I can do it. That is a recipe for disaster. Stick to what you do and do it well. Bring value to the team. Be a good team player. Look for opportunities to leverage your team if you have connections at an agency, bring that to the table. That will help the team. That will be my 2 cents, so to speak, on best practices when teaming. Questions? It's pretty quiet audience today.
Well, thank you, Eric, and thank you, Arthur. Arthur, when we visited a while back in regards to bringing you on board for this presentation, you gave a really wonderful overview of how you came to Shrewsberry. And, I think your experience was is important for, the people in our audience to know, you're from the Caribbean, and how in the world did you end up with these guys out of Indianapolis? So if you would just give us, a short overview of what it took to get you to where you are today.
Sure, I don't mind sharing, Leslie. Thanks for reminding me. So to share a bit more of my story. So my first degree in civil engineering is from Trinidad and Tobago. My home country, my home island is St. Lucia. That's like 2 islands south of Dominica, where Eric is from. And so I finished that degree 2003, worked for British consultants for a while. They were Halcro at the time, acquired by CH2M, who's now Jacobs. And it was a great experience as a young engineer to work in a regional office, but work on projects throughout the Caribbean. Subsequent to that, I did a master's in ocean engineering at Texas A&M College Station. I finished that in 2010. The rut of that economic downturn did not get work. So I went back to Halcro doing civil engineering and project management duties again, and did that for another 4 years before I actually had a stint with the Caribbean Development Bank. But my vocation always inspired me to pursue higher education. So in hunting for schools, CU gave me the best offer. So that's what got me to Colorado initially in 2014. And coincidentally, my relationship with Shrewsberry and Eric started off at a career fair at I keep saying CU Boulder, but for people out of the States, it's the University of Colorado in Boulder in 2016. Ironically, Eric, we're hosting a table at that career fair tomorrow again. So looking for new candidates. So that's my story. Fall 2017, I graduated with a PhD in civil engineering, focused on construction engineering and management, and was job hunting and got a great offer with Shrewsberry, and the rest is history.
I could add that, if I could add just 1 second, that at the time I met him, Arthur, we didn't have a position. So I asked him, anytime you come to Denver, just check with me, I'll meet with you, give you guidance. And I was just like a mentor, just trying to help him. What companies, he could look at, who he needs to connect with, as just help. And it just so happened that an opportunity came up. So I had someone on the bench. By talking to him, trying to help him, I was also creating a bench for Shrewsberry. When the opportunity arose, I could go directly to him.
Well, it goes back to, it's all about who you know, and networking and connecting. And oh, by the way, Lisa had put a little blurb in the chat about go Aggies. And actually, where I'm sitting right now, my neighbor has his American flag and his Texas A&M flag right underneath it, flying. So, and I'm kind of located out in the hinterlands of Northeast Washington. So yeah, those Aggies are everywhere.
Yeah. I was told a couple of weekends ago, the opening season game for Colorado was against the Aggies, and they put up a fight. Unfortunately, Colorado lost. It's kind of rooting for them.
Well, good. Well, we're getting kind of close to the end of the session, and if we have any additional questions, now is your time. And
Pan to the last slide if anybody has any questions, or I could give a quick delivery on the last slide if you're obliged, Leslie.
okay,
Yeah, I
there.
think one more
Oh.
slide, yeah. Just to wrap up and speaking again to how we nationally give back to the community, and I could speak from my experiences in Denver, and definitely we partner with the Denver Public Schools. We take a high school intern. Ever since I've started with Shrewsberry, we've been taking high school interns every semester, and we give them valuable work to do. They get a full Shrewsberry profile, email address, and they onboard, even if it's just for a semester as full-time staff, and they learn a lot as to what it would be like to be a civil engineer. I already mentioned the second line there, the trade associations that we're involved with. HCC, I did not mention, is Hispanic Contractors of Colorado. It's only local to Colorado. And notably there, again, with Eric's mentorship, every donation or sponsorship we give to these organizations, they all have an education focus, whether it's scholarship or otherwise. Food Bank of the Rockies, quarterly, COVID has put a wrench in that, but quarterly we used to get out there to the Food Bank of the Rockies. Our staff, friends, colleagues, we'd get together and go out there and help out, put meals together. And the Young Professionals program, I definitely want to highlight. So this is essentially Eric's brainchild again, and we've started in Denver and expanded it to nationally to Shrewsberry, our Shrewsberry colleagues. But what this is a full curriculum of, we meet once a month on everything from contracts to negotiation to project delivery methods, where we sit as a group virtually these days, and we go through the curriculum of what's involved in negotiating a contract, everything that we do on a day-to-day business level. So it's really a great platform to share knowledge, for knowledge transfer. All in all, culminating with the culture, the mentorship, and the environment for learning we foster here at Shrewsberry.
Well, it's phenomenal, the impact that your company has, not just on the community, but on the youth around the world, and it's admirable. Thank you so much for all your hard work. And we do have the slide is available. I think that was sent out with the notices for all the attendees, and we really we just got your posting on all the contact information, and so if you're participating, go into the chat and copy that information down. So with that, I think that we're probably pretty good. So we'll let our good guests call it a day. And thank you, Eric, and thank you, Arthur, for really doing a phenomenal job and enlightening us as to the fact that there are such great companies like yours, within our range to connect with, be it as a small business person or, as an employee, or nonprofits, it's really quite an endeavor. So thank you so much. We appreciate you coming today.
Well, thank you for having us, and I certainly am appreciative of the opportunity to invest in the community. So this is what that is to me and to us.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Leslie.
All right. Thanks, Arthur. Thanks.
Bye. Signing out.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we'd like to thank the SBTRC and the Port of Seattle for being such an integral part of this event. We really appreciate that. And I'll turn it over to Aisha for a few closing remarks.
Thank you, Leslie, and thank you, Arthur and Eric, for putting this together for us and being on here to talk to everyone. Honestly, I loved everything that you were talking about, especially when you're saying that you want to bring small businesses along with you. as you climb. And so I really appreciate that. And for everyone on here who is listening and watching, if you need connections to them, if this for any reason gets misplaced or you want connections with anyone else, please let me know. I would love to help you with that. And thank you again for being on here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Okay.